Functions. In this chapter, the objective is only to introduce the meaning of function, definition, how to express a function, what I mean by the domain of definition of a function, the graph of function, the variations of functions. Only definitions يعني بس شو يعني local maximum شو يعني local minimum or local extrema in general, the parity of function, the meaning of even function or odd function. Then only like this. مش أكتر من هيك يعني هذا introduction مش أكتر. طيب in the coming lessons, or sorry, in the coming years, in grade 11, grade 12. In grade 11, you are going to study more about functions, limits, derivative, asymptotes, variations of functions, how to determine the variation of the function, how to find the local extrema, antiderivatives on functions, graph, how to graph a given function, getting more study about functions. In grade 12, you are going to continue on functions, similar ideas to what you studied in grade 11, but particular functions, special functions, exponential, logarithm, inverse trigonometric functions, depend on which branch you are going to study. Okay, but more study about functions. Right. In this lesson, only the definition and some information about the graph, variation, and the parity. Okay. To start with the definition. Function. What is a function? In fact, you studied something about it. Straight line, if you consider a straight line d of equation y equal to x plus 1. When you put table of values x, y in order to graph the straight line. For example, you used to take values of x 0. If x equals 0, then y will be equal to 2 times 0. You replace x by 0, 2 times 0 plus 1, which is equal to 1. If x is equal to 1, then y will be equal to 2 times 1 plus 1, which is equal to 3. Yeah. Like, if x is equal to 5, then y is equal to 2 times 5 plus 1, which is equal to 11. 5, 11. As you can see here, for each input, you have one output. For each input, you have one output. But this output depends on this rule, let's say. This rule. In fact, this is a function. Here we have a function, which is a rule that assigns to each element, okay, for each one element it has one output, or it is related to one output, one element, another element. 0 is related to 1. Input 0, the output is 1. Input is 1, the output is 3. Input is 5, output is 11. For each element here in the values of x, you have or related to one element in value of y. هذا الانبوت هون بنسميهم دومين. هذا الاوتبوت بنسميهم range. In general, هذا اللي نحن بنحكي اللي هو straight line, it is an example on a function. In general, a function of نعم
شو بنسمي الاكس وشو بنسمي الواي؟
domain range. رح اكتبهم هون. Domain and range. So in general, we are saying here this straight line, okay, this equation of straight line, it is an example on functions. In general, a function f from a set d to the set of real numbers r is a rule that assigns a single element of R to each element of D. يعني كل element من D، كل element من هيدي الست D is related to exactly شو كاتب هون underline single one element, only one element of D. يعني for example if x equals 0 ما في يطلع عندك two values. if x equals 0 y will be equal 1. ما في يطلع عندك 0 or 1 وشي number ثاني 3. لا. For each one element x in the domain, it is related to only one element x and the set of real numbers or of the range. طيب. This function usually denoted by f, or the name is of the function, the name of the function denoted by f, g, h, whatever notation is with that. Or a function is denoted by a function is denoted by f, g, h, u, whatever. Okay. We write, for example, notation والexamples. However, خلينا نضلنا بالnotations. How to express a function. في واحد يقول f of x. Here, the function is f. f of x, f of x, it is the value of the function. It is the value of the function for this value of x, or it is the image, is the image of x. Then notation or denoted by notation. f of x. We read it f of x. The function here is f. The image of x is f of x. I'm not examples. Or sometimes we write the function f for each value of x. It has a value f of x. Arrow notation. Okay. Example. Let's say f of x is equal to نفسه هذا straight line اللي كنا عم ناخذ example for 2x plus 1. f of x is equal to 2x plus 1. It means here, for each value x, the output is 2x plus 1. يعني f of, let's say 1, it is 2 times 1 plus 1, which is equal to 3. The image of 1 is 3. 1 is related to 3. مثل هاي اللي كنا عم نكتبها هون بالتيبل. The image of 1 is 3. f of, let's say negative 5. It's 2 times negative 5. I'm replacing x by negative 5 plus 1, which is equal to negative 9. The image of negative 5 is negative 9. The value of the function, the value of the function when x is equal to negative 5 is negative 9. واضح?
Yes.
Another example. Let's say f of x is equal to radical x minus 3. This is a function. Let's say the image of 4, f of 4, it is radical 4 minus 3, which is radical 1, which is equal to 1. The image of 4 is 1. The value of the function when x equal to 4 is 1. What about f of 0? What can you say about f of 0?
I think ما بتزبط.
ما بتزبط.
1 ستيب.
كان حتصير radical
It's
negative 3.
radical 0 minus
بتزبط.
3. Radical negative 3. It's undefined.
ما بتزبط. صح.
ما يكون عندنا negative.
impossible.
من هاي رح نروح لشيء اسمه domain of definition of the function. طيب another example. Let's say f of x, it is 2x over x minus 2 or x minus 1. طيب let's say f of 0. What is f of 0? Replace x by 0. 2 times 0
minus 1.
So it is 0 over negative 1 equal to 0. So the image of 0 under this function is 0. The image of 0 is also 0.
Yes.
Right. What about f of 1?
It's impossible.
Not defined. It's 2 times 1 over 1 minus 1. 2 over 0.
1.
Undefined.
يعني yes.
Undefined stays.
ما فيها تكون.
يعني ما يكون ال denominator 0.
طيب. Good. طيب. From this, as you can see here, sometimes for some particular values of x, the function is not defined. طيب أنا كيف بعرف إمتى الفانكشن defined وإمتى لا؟ أو once you say that here for example f of 1 is defined, يعني في عندي في شيء اسمه the value or the function is defined on this, في value is not defined. It means that here we have some values of x that are in the domain or in the set D وفي values لا. طيب إمتى بتكون defined إمتى لا؟ وشو يعني domain of definition؟ شو يعني defined or not defined؟ طيب to move to the domain of definition of a function. Domain of definition, if you have a function f, given a function f, given a function f, type domain of definition of f. شو هو؟ What do you say? What do you think? Yes. What is f? What is the
أستاذ
domain
هاي
of
الراديكال f minus 3
نعم.
أو لا غلط لا خلص.
طيب ناخذ هذه two examples. Is 4 in the domain of definition of this function بهاي
هي real numbers.
بهيدا
هي
الفانكشن.
set of
إذا
real
أخذنا
numbers شي هيك.
if you consider f of x equal radical x minus 3. Is 4 in the domain of definition of the function?
Yes.
Yes, because f of 4 is defined.
F4
طيب 0 is it in the domain?
لا
No.
لأنه f of 0 is not defined. طيب here f of 1 is not defined. So 1 is it in the domain?
No.
لا
1 is not in the domain because f of 1 is not defined. So here when you talk about domain of definition of function, it means that you are finding set of values of x, set of values of x, so that or in which f of x is defined. هون نحن رح ندرس some functions اللي نحن already بنعرفهم مش أكتر. بعدين بتصير تدرسوا more functions. Example. طبعا domain of definition sometimes we write it df, d index f. Examples. Let's say the function f of x is equal to 5 over x minus 2. What is the domain of this function? What is the domain of definition of this function? For what values of x is this function defined?
X belongs to any real number except 2.
Except 2. Why except 2?
Because the denominator will be 0.
Except 2.
The denominator will be 0. Here we have a fraction. So the denominator should not be equal to 0. X minus 2 should not be equal to 0. It means that x should not be equal to. So the domain
اوكي أستاذ.
الطريقة اللي بنكتب فيها. نعم مين عم يسأل؟
أستاذ
نعم
بديع
نعم يا بديع.
هاي اكزامبل 2 دوت شو هاي حتى 1 او دي او او
وين؟
هاي الجملة اللي عم تكتبها هسه اكزامبل
ايه
اول وحدة
1
اول كلمة
1
دي اكس
1.
1 يعني
example of x شيء.
باينة او
طيب هلا x not equal to 2. هلا كيف هنكتبهم هلا هون؟ إذا بتتذكروا درس ال order of real numbers و writing intervals, how to write the interval. X different than 2, how to write the interval? Like, or how to write and join the domain. I'm going to write it in more than one way. أول وحدة. It is all the numbers except 2. كل real numbers are set of real numbers, all the real numbers except 2. Or sometimes we write it are except 2 backslash 2. To write it as interval, the domain, it is from negative infinity to open interval union to positive infinity. للي ناسي كيف هذا number line from negative infinity to positive infinity. You are saying x different than 2. So x is any real number except 2. So from negative infinity to union to positive infinity. Here is the domain. So it means here, if x is any number, but not 2, if x is not equal to 2, the function will be defined. Yani f of x is defined if this number x هيدا is not 2. If this number x is not 2. ده معناته الدومين. يعني شو ما أخذت number different than 2, f of 2 will be defined, or f of 2 it will have an outcome, it will have a value, a real value. F of 2 will have a real value, will be defined, will be in the domain, or will have an image. Or another example, let's say f of x 2x minus 1 over x squared minus 9. What is the domain? How to find the domain?
X belongs to any number other than 3.
Other than 3, yes.
Mistake
Or negative.
or negative?
Yeah.
Here the condition under the or in the denominator should not be equal to 0. X squared minus 9 should not be equal to 0. It means that x squared should not be equal to 9. And this means that x should not be equal to positive negative radical 9. And then x should not be equal to positive negative 3. So the domain will be all numbers except positive negative 3. Or to write it as interval, how to write this interval? Either negative infinity, negative 3, 3, positive infinity. Not negative 3, and it is not 3. So from negative infinity to negative 3,
نعمل interval.
union
Yes.
negative 3
negative 3 لل 3.
union 3 infinity.
Yes. ويرجع عنا 3 و positive infinity. Yes.
Another example.
أساسا بنكتب ال R minus نحط جوات البراكت هيدا النمبر.
braces. ليك
يا
هذا
سؤال
بس لك شغله. الدومين اللي حتتعود عليهم كلهم.
ايه
حتتعود على طريقه كتابتهم كلهم. لانه ممكن بالاكسرسايزز يقول لك الدومين هو هيك مثل ما انا كاتب هون، او خلينا ناخذ هيدا ممكن يعطيك الدومين هيك r minus 2 يعني all numbers except 2. ممكن يعطيك اياها هيك r backslash 2 يعني all numbers except 2. ممكن يعطيك اياها هيك interval.
اوكي استاذ.
Okay, انت مش مطلوب منك يعني when you have to find the domain, it is not required to write it in the three forms. Sometimes you can't write it in the three forms. الانترفال دايما فيك تكتب. اوكي؟ طب بالفانكشنز نحن عم ندرسها. فانا عم بكتب لك اياهم كلهم بس تتعود عليهم كلهم، انه شو ما ينطرح عليك
اوكي
تعرف تشتغل فيهم.
بس
أوكي.
في كلمة مش واضحة بس.
في كلمة مش واضحة؟
دي اف ايكوال، هاي اخر شيء كتبت
هون
فوق الثري. دي اف ايكوال اي ماينس او ار هاي.
ار
اوكي.
ار or real numbers. بدنا نكحلها عميناها. Okay. Another example. Let's say f of x is equal to x over x squared plus 1. What is the domain?
الاكس مش لازم doesn't.
لازم تكون
لا.
هذا، مش لازم تكون
استاذ
This is
ما في
ما I
exceptions.
got main شي هاي.
ما في exceptions I guess.
يعني
Yes.
إذا ما في exception شو يعني؟
يعني ما في domain.
ما في domain. يعني it is not
All
defined.
real numbers.
or real numbers. مش ما بيكون في domain. بيكون في domain
Yes.
بس الدومين بيكون all real numbers. هون if you are going to write something, you are going to put the denominator x squared plus 1 not equal to 0. طيب x squared plus 1 not equal to 0, then x squared is not equal to negative 1. ما هيدا true. It is true for all values of x. For all values of x. This means that the domain are real numbers. Yani from negative infinity to positive infinity. Right?
نعم
Yes.
استاذ.
مين حكي؟
أساس فيك
مين عم
تبعت
يسأل؟
هيدا لاي إنه all real numbers. ربا.
ربال أقول هون ال x squared not equal to negative 1. طب بس x squared not
Yes.
equal to negative 1 ما هي دي true. But for sure x squared
إيه
not equal
صح.
to negative 1. For any
Yes.
value of x squared not equal to negative 1. Which is true
أوكي
for all
أستاذ.
values of x. شو يعني true for all values of x؟
Yes.
يعني الدومين هن كل real numbers. يعني if you choose any number from negative infinity to positive infinity, f of this number is defined, or the function is defined on this number. صحيح؟
Yes. أوكي أستاذ. Thank you.
طيب. Another example. Let's say f of x is equal to radical x minus 1. What is the domain? What is the condition?
نعم استاذ.
What is the condition? The domain.
يعني
All numbers greater than negative 1.
Greater than negative 1, including 0.
لا.
لا.
Greater than negative 1. 0 is greater than negative 1.
Greater than the 0.
It's not guessing. You don't have to guess.
Greater than 1 فينا نقول.
طب ليه؟ What is the condition?
Radical x minus 1 cannot be negative.
You mean x
Negative.
minus 1 cannot be negative.
Yes, for x is
إذا كانت
greater than
greater
1.
than 1 يعني بتطلع 2 minus
So the
1.
condition x minus 1 should be greater than or equal to 0. صح؟ It means
Yes.
that x should be greater than 1 or equal to 1.
Yes.
Yes.
مثل ما قلت لكم مش guessing شغله خلص عم طلع inside the radical should be greater than 0 or equal. So x minus 1 greater than or equal to 0 and then you solve it. So the domain will be from 1 to positive infinity. Okay? Clear?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Another example. يعني معاش ما نكتر كثير examples ونروح للفكرة اللي بعدها. قد ما بدكم فينا نعطي examples. Let's say f of x نخلط لكم بين هذا الدرس والدرس اللي قبله. Radical of negative x plus 3 over x plus 2. What is the condition here? What is the condition?
x مش لازم تكون equal to negative 2.
No?
بالدينومينيتور ما لازم تكون نيجاتيف 2.
ما لازم تكون negative 2.
طيب اوكي x should not be equal to negative 2. طيب ما في عندي radical شو بعمل؟ يعني مثلا فيها تكون let's say negative 5 or
Okay.
can x be equal to 7? فيها تكون x equal 7. 7 is not equal to negative 2. يعني can x be equal 7?
It says الx لازم تكون
No.
فينا نقول negative. لا ما فيهاش تكون negative.
ليه ما فيها تكون
Negative
negative؟
x plus 3 must be negative.
خد negative 1.
الدينومينيتور.
شوف انت عم تقول لي الاكس ما فيها تكون نيجاتيف f of negative 1 هات نعمل replace يا you get
لا مبالغ
negative negative 1 يعني 1 plus 4 over negative 1 plus 2 so
بالغ.
you get radical 5 over 1 radical 5 it is defined. قلت لكم not guessing, you don't have to guess.
Yes.
في عندي rule use
Yes.
that here we have radical. شو يعني put the conditions. You have a condition under the radical should be greater than 0. Should be greater than or equal to 0. صح؟
Yes.
Okay. طيب.
Yes.
Well, you have this rational expression. You need it greater than 0. يلا ارجع للدرس اللي قبله. Find the roots of each. Here, the root of the numerator is 3. The root of the denominator negative 2. And then put table of signs for the table. اللي كنا عم نشتغلوا بالدرس اللي قبله امبارح خلصنا منه. X negative x plus 3. X plus 2. And then the ratio negative x plus 3 over x plus 2. The
أيوة.
roots, you have negative 2 and you have 3. Negative infinity, positive infinity. Negative 2 shaded, it is not in the domain. لأنه ممنوع تكون denominator 0. Okay. Negative x plus 3, the root is 3. Before the root positive because the coefficient of x is negative. One negative. X minus 2, هيدي negative. Positive. Okay. Then negative, positive, 0
استاذ لا بتخرطشها لهاي هونيك
لانه ما بحبهاش.
زيحها. اوكي.
عندي مشكله مع النيجاتيف 2 نفسيا يعني. شو هي بديع؟ ليش مخطشها؟
لا ما هي رول، عارف كيف استاذ؟
لا ما عرفتش كيف استاذ. ليش مخطشها؟ فيها تكون الاكس ايكوال نيجاتيف 2
لا
لانه دينومينيتور.
لا اكيد لا.
ليش لا؟ لا اكيد لا، مأكد منها. هات نشوف ليه.
لأنه بالدينومينيتر استاذ.
واذا كان بالدينومينيتور شو يعني؟ شو الدينومينيتور مش ابن عالم؟ الدينومينيتور انه رقم ناقص يعني مثلا، ولا كيف؟ هلا بديع توا بحاله يسال سؤال، خليني مش فهمان وما عادش بدي اسال دخيل عارضكم.
لا
بديع. شو هي بديع؟ هيك عم بتقول؟
لا استاذ.
اوعى ازعل منك. اللي بينحكى بالميتنج بضلوا بالميتنج. هلا اوكي بنرجع بنعمل له ابلود على اليوتيوب، بس انه اسمع بديع، يا بديع
يسمون شهر.
اسمعني. هيدا مش لانه والله هيك بس، لانه دينومينيتور. لازم تفهم شغله، اذا كانت الاكس ايكوال نيجاتيف 2، اذا الاكس ايكوال نيجاتيف 2، هاي الاكس بلس 2 شو بتصير؟ بتصير نيجاتيف 2 بلس 2 بتصير 0. طب صار عندك 0 بالدينومينيتور.
صح.
مسموح يكون عندك 0 بالدينومينيتور؟
كيف؟ بالدينومينيتر زيرو؟
ايه؟
لا
فمشان هيك انه لازم الاكس ممنوع تكون نيجاتيف 2. فمشان هيك انا بعمل شيدنج عليها، انه هاي ممنوع تكون نيجاتيف 2. هاي الشيدنج يعني نو نيجاتيف 2. اوكي؟
اوكي.
ليه؟
يا استاذ
نرجع لهي.
شكرا.
تكره ساعة اللي بدك سؤال. طيب
يا اكيد.
back to this. نحن بدنا اياها greater than 0. يعني بدي البوزيتيف. وين البوزيتيف؟ فاذا x the domain will be negative 2 to 3. هلا وين open وين closed؟ negative 2 open بلس shading. 3 are equal to 0, so I have to include the roots. مين الروتس؟ عندي بس هيدا 3 هون نحن حاطط 0. So including 3 closed interval of 3. So this is the domain. Open interval negative 2 close interval 3. Or negative 2 3 open at negative 2 close at 3. Okay?
Okay.
يا اوكي استاذ.
Good. Now for the second part.
بس فكرة ثانية.
قصة فكرة ثانية. Graph of the function or the graph of the function. When you have a function f of x is equal, خلينا ناخذ أول وحدة لأنه أنتم معودين عليها straight line to x plus 1. طيب. What do you mean by the graph of function? نحن قلنا for each value x طبعا هون the domain of this function is a set of real numbers. We don't have any condition يعني from negative infinity to positive infinity. طيب. We said for each value x في عندي value f of x. يعني for example f of 1 is equal to 3. f of 0 is equal to 1. f of negative 1 is equal to negative 1. f of 3 is equal to 7. طيب يعني كل value x عنده value f of x اللي هي بنسميها 1. اوكي؟ طيب يعني هون صار عندك order pair. الاكس هي 1 الاف of x هي 3. we consider the point of coordinates 1 3. we consider the point of coordinates 1 3. هيدا انت التيبل اللي كنت تعمله قبل x y x equal negative 1 0 1 و 3. هون كنت تحط مثلا negative 1 هيدي 1 هيدي 3 وهيدي 7.